Hello, welcome. This is case study and data analysis for EFD 620 for Dr. Gill at Jacksonville State University. I am Wendy Etter, and my other group members will introduce themselves.
Oh, hello, I'm Eric Robinson.
Hello, and I'm Leah Spears.
All right, so our data analysis presentation starts out with this quote, so you can think about this as we work through. Without data, all we have is opinion. And one thing we learned in the text is data gives us facts to base our decision making for our students from. And so that helps us to make stronger decisions to help student growth and achievement. This is our agenda. We will look at what catches our attention. We will look at what the data tells us and what it does not tell us. We will look at good news to celebrate. We will look at the problems of practice suggested by the data, and then we will have an outline and action plan at the end. Throughout this meeting, we will adhere to meeting norms, being positive and constructive. We will keep conversation student-centered. We'll be open-minded, and it is okay to disagree respectfully. And remember, we will be timely in our purpose. Is everyone agreeing to those meeting norms?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, Miss Leah, will you tell us the situation, the scenario that we are in right now?
Yes, so we were tasked with Miss Esperanzo is a new teacher in the 9th grade math algebra 1 class. Her students had took an assessment, and we are to facilitate a meeting to analyze her unit assessment data, and that is what our scenario is about.
Okay, so this is the data we will be looking at. So as we go through this is what we will take time to analyze to make an action plan for Miss Esperanza. All right, so group members, at first we're going to take 2 minutes. I'm going to set 2 minutes on the timer, and I want you to look at the data and come up with anything that catches your attention, any observations. All right, so here we go. 2 minutes is on the clock, and go ahead. Okay, we've had 1 minute. Is anyone ready to tell us some things that you've observed just by looking at this data briefly?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready to go. But to talk about start off, I feel like too many students are in the red or 75% of the items. Or all the items are 75% of the items. That was a big thing that stuck out to me. Also, students struggling with open-ended questions and the short answer questions that we see at the bottom were big things that stuck out to me.
I agree with that. Go ahead, Leah.
Yes, also I agree with that as well, Wendy. I've seen a lot of red boxes. I noticed that this assessment has questions from pre-algebra and algebra 1. And a trend that I see is that algebra 1 standard 2 were not mastered.
Right. I agree with that. And this is very concerning data. This is at the end of the quarter. It's a summative assessment, but there is a lot of red and a lot of yellow. Very little mastery shown. It seems to me like just noticing, like you said, Leah, the Algebra 1 standards are the ones that seem to be the least mastered, and the pre-algebra standards, there's even some concerns there, which could cause some of the issues we're seeing in Algebra 1. Some of the notices that we saw in our just looking over in preparation was, of course, like Eric said, the lack of mastery on open-ended questions. Did y'all look at the test and compare what might possibly be the problem on that? Looking at the open-ended question number 13 and 14. And then at the end of the test, number 27 and 28.
Let me pull up the data real quick. Well, while I'm pulling up the data, Wendy, will you tell us what you noticed about those questions?
Yes. My concern is just simply stamina. Those open-ended questions required 3 different parts, and being able to read through that, we don't know, well, we'll talk about that later, but you know, that, and you notice by the end of the test, that last set of open-ended questions, they didn't do as well as the first set of open-ended questions. So it could just be stamina in making it through all the parts of that question to be able to get it correct.
Okay. I didn't even realize that. That's a great point.
Eric, why do you think they did better on the multiple choice questions than the open-ended questions?
Well, Wendy, to be honest with you, I think that they're just more acclimated and more used to doing multiple choice questions. I think a lot of the things that we do in the classroom are multiple choice, where they have a lot less other like short answer, open-ended answer, as far as options. I think, that's maybe something that we need to address throughout the school year, throughout the semester, to be able to help them improve on those type of questions.
Gotcha, because they are used to seeing multiple
Yes.
multiple choice questions on high stakes testing. So they're
Yes.
comfortable with that. Okay, I'm going to go on to step 2 now. What does the data tell us and what does it not tell us? So again, we're going to take 2 minutes to look over the data and make some notes, and then we will share our thoughts in a discussion. Okay, again, we're about back at the 1 minute mark. So does anyone have anything they've already noticed that you want to share, or do we need a little bit more time to look over the data?
We're ready to share.
Okay, Leah, would you like to start us off?
Yes. So I'm realizing that the students did do well, like we said, on the open-ended questions. And so that leaves room to believe maybe they had been guessing on some of the multiple choice questions. Also, I'm seeing that, like you said earlier, the pre-algebra standards were not mastered. So maybe we need to go back and do some reteaching of pre-algebra before moving on to the Algebra 1 standards. Those were the 2 things I seen.
Okay. Eric?
As far as with me, while I was kind of the what the data does not, tell us, kind of what I kind of really went on, and was factor of time in the students' progress, as far as, how much time they're spending doing these, working on these different standards. Um, time exposure to the material and the testing style. I think that will also be a thing where, maybe having some type of pre-test that kind of resembles the test and those standards. Also, like their accommodations for reading. I think that's another thing for them. Some kids may have a problem, in lower levels of reading. So, reading out these problems may be a situation where they didn't receive those accommodations. So I think those kind of three things were kind of some things that the data did not tell us.
I agree with you what accommodations were in place. And I also agree with you about the time. A quarter is typically 9 weeks. And there's 14 standards that are included. I'm guessing, and this is just an assumption, this does not tell us in the data, that the pre-algebra standards were previously taught in earlier grades. And
Yeah.
so the teacher expected them to already have a knowledge of those. And so maybe that's why they thought between linear equations and system of equations, she could move a little faster. But even in 9 weeks, 14 standards is a lot to cover. So it almost seems like the students may be a bit overwhelmed and not ready for the application part that you see in the short answer and the open-ended. Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with both of you all. And like you said, with the standards, that's a lot to cover. I even think for an adult trying to master 14 standards is a lot.
That's a lot of grades in one grading period. That's a lot of standards, a lot of practice. And you
Exactly.
got to think these are ninth graders too, who have extracurricular activities. So they're not coming home and having time to rehash everything every night. So that is a lot to cover in one quarter. So we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know because of the data. One final thought that I had, and it was mentioned in chapter 2, and I was impressed by this in the text that it did mention this, is COVID loss. Could those pre-algebra standards be things that they miss due to the COVID years that they would have mastered during that time? We don't know.
Right. That's a
I
great
definitely,
point.
yes, ma'am.
Some other things that are on this next slide is the depth of knowledge is shallow. So we talked about that, which could be the cause, could be the time issue. And there's a lot of reteaching that needs to happen, and we'll address that in our action plan. Is there anything else on step 2?
Ma'am.
Go ahead.
I was saying no, ma'am.
Okay. Eric, you good? I think we're ready
Yes,
to
ma'am.
move on to the next step. Now, the next step is just continuing the discussion, but we are at 5 minutes now, so we have a little bit longer to use our own depth of discussion here, if I'm going to use that term in this analysis. So what is the good news to celebrate? You always want to talk about the good news to celebrate. One of the articles we had to read said that when you're given feedback, talk to the students about what they did well. Even if that's the smallest amount, talk about what they did well first. So, Eric, can you tell us some things that are good to celebrate in this?
As far as things to celebrate, I see that we're great at multiple choice. Our multiple choice responses were a strength for us. Um, Also, too, as far as I think that we have a great base for our pre-algebra standards at 82% as far as our data analysis and our scatter plots, which I think will help us as far as, working into linear equations and expressions. I think that, math a lot of times is a building block. So really being able to take the standards that we were great at and being able to kind of build off, I think will help us as far as kind of go get into our reteaching.
Okay. Leah, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with Eric. Also, all students got question number 7 correct. So that would be something that I would definitely point out to the class and get them excited about that. And honestly, the world we live in, some people drop out of school in 9th grade.
Right.
So just giving them that encouragement to say, hey, I'm still proud of you. At least you tried. And this is
Right.
where we're going to move from here.
I agree with that too. And Everybody can identify a function. Well, that's where you've got to start. Once you can identify it, then you can start getting into the other parts, the higher level math skills. 100% on that, 80% on solving linear equations. So we know how to solve a linear equation, but it was the graphing and the writing about it where we, again, that depth of knowledge. So we'll work on that. And then above proficiency on most of the pre-algebra algebra standards, they grasp 7 standards. That's half. And to me, as a teacher, that's enough standards for 1 quarter by the time you have time to teach and reteach to make sure you show mastery. So 7 standards is pretty good in 1 quarter. Do y'all have anything else? We've got.
I think the big thing too, keeping the kids positive. I think, celebrating, them understanding that it's room for growth in several standards.
Right.
We're going to work with them toward growing toward that, but them understanding that, hey, I didn't do my best this time, but now I know how to, get the problem and how to make it better and work to get better. So I think, them understanding, turning that negative into a positive, I think, helps them celebrate that also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are some great celebrations. Now we're going to look at some problems. This is the not so fun part. And as we look at this part, we're going to think about what issues could have been raised about classroom practices. What's the first step to increase student success in this area? Where do you suggest we go from here? What are the next steps this teacher should take? And is there other data or material we should look at? So we have 2 minutes again this time to make notes on our own and come up with ideas to brainstorm. And then we'll have 3 minutes to share. So go ahead and on your own, just go ahead and think about some of the answers to these questions that you see on the screen. We can begin whenever y'all are ready if y'all have an idea that you want to go ahead and start with.
Cool.
Okay. So Eric, what are your thoughts?
First thing that I looked at was the issue that could have been raised about the classroom practices. And I think teachers should adjust question types on classroom tests to better familiarize students with answering short answer and open-ended questions. Also, I thought about teachers offering a mini lesson on strategy as far as answering short answer and open-ended questions. I think would help out also.
I think that's excellent because not only do we have to teach them the content of our specific subject, we also have to teach them how to succeed at these types of assessments as well. Leah, what
exactly.
are you? Go ahead.
I'll tell you exactly. And I think, those will help out with just those test taking skills, and teaching those, will help us out also too, because they show that they're able to, get at some of these standards. And it may be a situation where just test taking skills may, be the difference in, making the difference in passing that standard or not.
I know with experience with students who have anxiety with testing, they can do the math. They can explain, tell me how to do the problem, but you put that 4-letter word in front of them and you lay that test and you take away that help for that time period, and their brain just does not cooperate and show what they know on the test.
Definitely.
Yeah, both of you are absolutely correct. And I feel like the reteaching should be personalized to each student. So differentiation, also doing small groups, letting the groups that are actually testing well maybe help retest other students and help assist, because that'll actually help them get better as well.
Do some peer tutoring, yes.
Yeah, peer tutoring, peer assessments as well. And then basically the intervention should be tailored to support each student individually.
All right. Some other problems that we see, we addressed those before, just the overwhelmingness of the test and how many standards are included, the different types of questions that they have and how to respond to those. So that leads us to the final step, which is step 5. What are our conclusions? So how can these be addressed, and what is our action plan? So in this, we're just going to go ahead and wrap up our discussion. Oh, went too far. And these are some suggestions that we came up with together in our planning. Erica, will you tell us about this slide right here? Or Leah, sorry.
Oh, well, according to Bowrich, curriculum-based measures and formative assessments are now crucial to progress monitoring and base data decisions components to respond to intervention. One thing that I came up with, I think would be good for the school or the district. We might want to considering purchasing a platform called iReady. It's an online assessment tool that helps the teachers and all students. It's a pathway to proficiency, and it helps with reading and math. So as we spoke about, maybe students not being able to read the word problems, this resource could help them in English, in ELA, and in math.
Okay. I agree with that. I'm not familiar with iReady. We use iExcel and STAR in our schools, but there is a school in our district that's piloted that, so it's coming down the path for us. But we have done a lot of practice in small groups, and I've implemented a lot of that in my classroom. In fact, when I was looking at the data just a minute ago, I sorted the classes into an on-level group, which is the biggest bulk in the middle. There's 6 of them that are on level. There's 4 that could use just some extra practice, probably provided by iReady. And then there's 4 that you can see that are red across the board on the data that really could use some small group personalized reteaching. Eric, what would you do? What are your thoughts? What's your
I think all those are great. Also, too, I thought about the remediation grouping, just to be able to set up. Also, too, with the kids that we have, I think it'd be you be able to set up these regrouping, these grouping remediation stations, but also them rotating into different stations, working on different standards. I think would be very big for them. Seeing that the test has so many standards, well, we're gonna have to find a way to be able to work all that together and also make it exciting for the students. I think, with it being so much on them, we have to find a way to make it fun also.
I think that's a good idea. The stations would give them some motivation and some movement because things like the percentages and the parallel and perpendicular, that's not going to take long for them to go,
No.
oh, okay, this is how that works, and then be able to plug it into the other standards. I think that would be a good way. And about how long do you think this teacher would need to spend on reteaching before moving forward?
I think you have to start off. You have to start off at the pre-algebra first, to kind of go from those standards and see where we go. Work from there to be able to work our way up, to the algebra 1 and algebra 1 standards. So I think we have to be able to collect data on that first to be able to see where we have to go for the algebra 1 and how what would be our time period to be able to rework on that other standards.
Yeah. And also to add with the student engagement, I already has games. And I know when you turn things into games, music, kids normally are wanting to be successful. And so, yeah, seeing that they've mastered 7 standards and it's 14 and it took them a quarter, so maybe another quarter, and just work on those standards, those 7 standards that they didn't get.
I agree with that. And it may, put them a little bit behind as far as where they need to be. But if you slow down and they can master those standards, that can propel them forward to success.
Definitely.
So,
Exactly.
okay. Any more thoughts that you want to add?
Nope, I think we've covered everything.
I think so too. I think we've developed a great plan and analysis for Ms. Esperanza, and if implemented, we should see some growth in her next assessment.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.